When a woman is handed a tie as an award, the message is clear. We did not expect you. Simona Scarpaleggia did not fight the moment. She outlasted it, then changed the system. From IKEA's C-suite to the United Nations, this conversation will change how you think about leadership. Care, share, embrace is how. Hello, friends, and welcome to I Know I Belong When, an innovation, unbiased production where bold voices, curious stories, and authentic impact amplify knowing that you are invited, seen, heard, and needed. Our conversations go from the boardrooms to the break rooms, from the sidewalks to our living rooms, from our relationships to ourselves. We explore the full spectrum of belonging, the joy of being seen, the pain of being left out, and the courage it takes to build spaces where every identity is welcomed, valued, and loved. We also hold space for each of our unique identities to joyfully prosper and thrive. I am your host, Christopher Bylone, someone who believes knowing you belong is a birthright. Some people climb the ladder. Today's guest took that ladder, questioned who built it and who was left off of it, then spent a career making sure that the next one was built differently. Meet Simona Scarpaleggia, born in Rome, trained at two of Europe's most elite institutions, honorary doctorate recipient, former CEO, United Nations co-chair, board member, author, public speaker, wife, mother of three, and the woman who her grandmother knew she was going to lead something long before the world caught up. Let that land for a second, because this person spent years mastering human resources and organizational development, then stepped into line management at IKEA, then became CEO of IKEA Switzerland for nearly a decade, then led IKEA Group's global project on the future of work, then ran Edge Strategy, and somewhere in the middle of all that, found time to co-chair the United Nations high-level panel on women's economic empowerment, reporting to the Secretary General of the United Nations directly. In 2022, the Swiss Economic Forum gave her its Lifetime Achievement Award, where she wrote the book literally on gender-balanced teams, and it's called The Other Half, and is exactly necessary as it sounds. And the detail that says everything, when she showed up to accept an award on behalf of IKEA, they handed her a tie because no one stopped to consider that a company's leader might be a woman. She took the tie, she kept leading, and now here she is. Simona, welcome to I Know I Belong When.
Thank you very much for having me. I'm happy and also curious to go ahead with this conversation. Thank you.
Simona, thank you so much for being on the show. It is an honor. I have gotten to know you over the years. We've worked on a project with Edge, and that's how I first got introduced to you. And ever since then, I was just enamored by what you do and so inspired by the work you're leading to not just bring gender equality, but equality for all people around the world. So thank you for the work that you have done and continue to do.
Thank you. Thank you.
Alrighty. So let's get into this conversation. Simona, you have led teams across continents, sat at United Nations tables, reshaped what leadership looks like in rooms where they are not built with you in mind. So before we get into all of that, who is Simona when no one is watching and when nothing is on the agenda?
Well, there's not a big difference between who am I in public and who am I at home, but of course there is a difference, not only the formality part. I'm a constructive person and curious. My values are independence, fairness, and also solidarity. So this ended up in being quite a constructive person. Those who are close to me sometimes find me a bit relentless and tiring at times. But the good time is that I tend to be constructive. So this is something that stays also in the professional environment. I like working with people. I'm not a solo player. I really love working with people. When I'm not working, my favorite thing is traveling and reading. And also cooking. I'm quite a good chef. I'm not a baker. I cannot bake cakes or something sweet. It's not my thing. But I enjoy cooking. And, I'm Italian originally, so it's part of our culture. We must learn how to cook. And one thing that, especially my kids, they don't like it, but I love it. I have a collection of eyeglasses with all kinds of funny shapes because I wear normally classical clothing, but the eyeglasses, bright colors of funny shapes, I have that.
That's awesome. Being an Italian myself, my grandmother instilled to me that we need to know how to cook. One of the things that I always was impressed with my grandmother is that she would be able to take a meal that she planned for two and in 5 seconds be able to feed 25 people. But I'm a baker. I love to make
Okay.
sweets.
And
You
we
cook
can
the meal and I'll
compensate.
make the dessert.
Yes, with great pleasure.
Oh, that's wonderful. So your grandmother gave you a ring at 16 and told you that you could learn anything. How much of your life has been a direct response to that moment?
You know, that I really think that was a pivotal moment in my life because the way she formulated it, she said, if you want to lead, you need to learn and anything can be learned. But in this sentence, you have the choice if you want to learn. You can lead if you want to, or if you don't want, you make your choice. You need to learn, so it's something that in a way gives you the responsibility. You cannot just, it doesn't come out of the blue. You need to put an effort and you are accountable for that. And anything that can be learned, you say, the world is enormous, it's wide. Choose and go for it. I think this was really, and I have to say, she didn't tell me that only once. It was a bit of her mantra somehow,
Yes.
but it really stayed. And I'm very grateful to Nonna Teresa for that.
That's wonderful. And I think that's so important that learn whatever you can learn and then make a choice of what you want to do. If you're going to lead a team, be the best leader you can be. If you're going to be somebody who is working in the trades and a craft, be that best person.
Exactly.
Right? Do what you can as best as you can. So that's a really great life lesson to learn. I will say that there are many lessons I've learned from my grandmother that stay with me today. And sometimes the voice just of her rises in the back of my head and goes, hey, Christopher, remember that lesson I taught you? You
Yeah.
need to be reminded of it. So those are great memories and great lessons to have.
Yes, indeed.
So you describe yourself as a passionate person about people and pragmatic about the progress. How do those two things, the heart and the strategy, coexist in the way you lead?
Actually, Christopher, I don't think they could not coexist. I would not be authentic, I would not be myself. So they do coexist. And the way I lead, in a way, the thinking behind it, the feeling behind is also to care about people and to be a good listener, to try to understand what their needs are and to communicate also what the needs of the organizations are so that we can make something good out of it. The other principle is to share, share the mission. You remember, I'm in business since over 45 years, so many, many years. And I remember at the beginning it was, information is power. You shouldn't share anything. And the more you go up in the hierarchy, then you know more and you know best. Today, this is completely out of the plate because you need to share to make people more involved, but also to share because you don't know it all. You need to get all the different competencies. So sharing is important. Also sharing success and sharing failure. Because, when you share the failure and you don't blame your team for something that didn't work, but you are part of it, it creates trust. And this is very important. And then also embrace different things, different point of views, different ideas, the new that is coming. And nowadays it's coming so often and so fast. So these three principles of care, share, and embrace are the base of my leadership approach.
Share, care, and embrace. That's really impactful because I do think we need to make sure that we, like you said, we are sharing our successes and our failures. We did not get to where we were on our own. How are we caring for the people around us, which is so important, right? It's about, if you care for others, they're going to care for you.
Exactly.
And how do we embrace those around us and bring them into the tight circle and let them know that the care that we have for them we are embracing their whole selves. So that's really important and really impactful. Thank you for sharing that.
Thank you.
Okay, so on this show, we believe that names carry history, identity, and belonging all at once. So let's start right there with your name, Simona. Tell us about your name, where it came from, what does it mean to you, and what does it feel when others get it right?
Yes. So, now, first of all, I have to say, where it came from, it's not a family name, so there was no Simona in the ancestry. And it was a name that back in the 60s, when I was born, was quite fashionable in Italy. But the way it was chosen, it was a bit tricky because of course, my father and my mother were discussing this name. And then my father said, okay, let's do that. We put the 3 top names that we would like to give to this baby girl. And he told my mom, you pick one, and the one that is written on this little piece of paper will be the name. And then my mom picked the name, and it was Simona. Truth to be told, that he didn't tell her that he wrote Simona in all 3. In all 3. So he had a very clear mind, but he just wanted to make her. Yeah. Anyhow, she liked Simona as well, but it came in a bit of a tricky way. Simona is of Hebrew origin, and it means he or she who listens, but also he or she who has been heard by the Lord. And there's this ancient saying that says, nomen omen. So in your name, there is a part of your destiny, your potential. And somehow I am told, and I really try to be a good listener. So something stays from the name.
Absolutely. So what a beautiful story and a fun story. Hey, Dad, I love how you were like, okay, I want Simona to happen, but we're going to have fun in getting there.
Yeah.
So that's just wonderful. That's absolutely wonderful. So you were the co-chair of the United Nations high-level panel on women's economic empowerment. Behind that title, there are real women whose economic realities shape every conversation. What do you think about when you reflect on that work?
So it was a very interesting experience, a very interesting work, and I have witnessed that there are many people in the United Nations that are truly believing in what they're doing and trying to do their best to provide tools, to influence legislation, to help economically, even though sometimes there are some bureaucratic obstacles. No? But what we did, and I think I'm quite proud of that, we issued 2 reports. This high-level panel worked for almost 2 years. And we issued 2 reports, and we all had a clear goal to make something that was actionable and that was pragmatic and concrete, because all the theoretic statements were already there. I mean, since 20 years back, when Hillary Clinton said women's rights are human rights and became famous, and everybody, all the statements were in that direction, but nothing moved really. So we issued these reports that addressed institutions, companies, and even individuals to do the effective things to improve and to empower women economically at all latitudes and from all walks of life that are, of course, different. So I found that useful, and I can see traces of that happening in the world, even though, and this you can understand me very well, it is frustrating that is not moving so fast. And in some cases, like what we see in the last year, we are suffering backlashes in women's advancement, but in general, in the inclusion piece. Inclusion is under attack, and we have to also be very intentional and stand behind our values and protect them.
Absolutely, absolutely. I think even in this time that we are in, standing in your values is even much more important, right? Because when times are good, the values are easy to stand with.
Yes.
But when the times are rough, it's really easy or easier for people to say, oh, those values can go by the wayside because were they really values to begin with? And so I think it's for organizations and leaders and ourselves, we have to be committed to the values in which we espouse and don't let that change, right? If your values are your values, then stick with them and lean into them, right? Exactly. If you lean into your values, it's going to carry you forward and people are going to know that your values are genuine. But if they were just words on a website or in a slide deck, they don't really mean much.
And I was reflecting on what do we see around us, especially these days, that are tough in the world. And we sometimes see leadership that it's really preposterous in its detachment, it's arrogant in its tone, it's greedy in its intent, and then it's inhumane in its consequences. So do we just accept it and say this is the new model of leadership? I don't think so, actually. And that's why standing behind the values gives us strength, because this is what we believe in, and we continue behaving consistently with those values, and also we continue supporting other people who believe in the same values and defend the world from bad things that can happen.
Absolutely. So I want to shift this conversation back to you, Simona. So can you bring us back to a specific moment in your career, maybe early, maybe unexpected, where you felt completely and undeniably seen as a leader?
I have one story for sure. It's really nice. Many years ago, I led an IKEA store. At IKEA, we called it store, but it was 500 people head count and 110 million euro turnover. It is a company. Every IKEA store is a company, basically.
Yes.
And then I had the privilege of leading it from the build-up. I had the role, there was just a green field and all the construction work, etc. And then I and my team, of course, hired these 500 people and everything was ready. And at IKEA, we have this tradition that when you do the inauguration, the opening of a new store, you do it at 7 o'clock in the morning, and the mayor is there, the first clients are there, and we offered this breakfast that is normally herring and vodka at 7 o'clock in the morning, and then you have to cut a log instead of cutting a ribbon. So everything was ready, we were super excited. The evening before the inauguration, you normally go out, the store manager and the management team, they go out for dinner with the Swedish ambassador in the country and some other main players that. So I was ready to go to the dinner, still in the store, and we had a flood. We had one of the pipes break, and from the ceiling you started seeing all this water, and I have this vivid memory of seeing documents and invoicing floating on the floor. So first of all, what happens in the store, if this goes on, because all the furniture, the sofas, they cannot be soaked by water. But the thing that I really felt, these people, they were tired, it was evening, 7 o'clock, they were about to go home. They told me, you go to the dinner, you don't worry, we take care of it, no problem, it will be solved. And I felt they did it because they loved me, they did it because they were so proud of the whole work that had been done, they didn't want to ruin it. So I went, you can imagine the dinner, I had my stomach was like a knot, but we had dinner, and then midnight I went back to the store to see, and in fact, they had solved it. It was fine, it was dry, everything was okay. Morning after at 7, we opened the store, it was good and great. But I really felt I didn't have to ask, Christopher.
Right.
That is him. I didn't have to ask. They told me, you go with the other part of the team, half of the team stays, and we organize everything. I still remember that because it meant a lot for me at that time.
Yeah, because both things were really important, right? One, there was a crisis at the store that needed to be solved by the next morning because you were opening. But also that dinner with the ambassador was also just as important. And so you had a part to play, and
Yes.
everybody knew that they all had parts to play, and
Yes.
they needed to be able to support you as the leader of the store. So to go to the dinner with the ambassador and not expecting you to stay back. And so, what a moment to say you've arrived as a leader, but I also think it also speaks to who you are because you had a team that you led with purpose
Yes.
and they wanted to follow you into the storm and
Yes.
make sure that
Purpose.
everyone, right, with purpose. And so it speaks to how you also led that team, where you were creating moments of belonging for them, just as they were creating a moment of belonging for you, so that everybody knew what the job was and what the end goal was. So, what a
Yeah.
beautiful story of teamwork.
Yes. It's very dear to my heart as well. Yes.
That's awesome. So, you have worked across cultures, countries, organizational structures for decades. Where have you personally felt the deepest sense of belonging that made the environment different?
I cannot forget IKEA Switzerland because I spent there nearly 10 years as a CEO. And over these 3 years, I changed more or less three teams, not all of them at the same time, because people stayed and then went to another IKEA company or country. But it was when we decided to reposition the brand, because the IKEA brand in Switzerland at the time, out of all the marketing research, it was felt and perceived as a need brand. When I need a wardrobe, low price, quick fix, I go to IKEA. But it was not, there was not an emotional attachment to the brand. So we said, okay, this is our mission. We want to reposition the IKEA brand. And in that, we understood and thought that also not only showing the furniture in a different way, enhancing the quality, but also showing as a brand that we were standing by a certain set of values, including diversity and inclusion and solidarity and supporting communities. And so we started to do a very systematic work there. But I was so happy to see that the whole team, the logistic manager, the marketing manager, the HR, everyone really took that to heart and they believed in that. So this created such a belonging, a feeling of belonging for the whole team, again, behind a purpose, as you said before, that made things function. In fact, so I was there like 9 years, 9 full fiscal years, let's say, plus a little bit more. And the brand changed its positioning and was perceived like a loved brand, not anymore a neat brand, but a loved brand. Right. And it was, for me, this was the greatest satisfaction that we really meant it and we did it. Not only when it comes to gender equality in the workplace, but also supporting, those were the years where refugees from Syria came in Europe in big numbers and also in Switzerland, but we ran a program to include these refugees in our stores. And we did also intercultural training to the refugees and to the other colleagues, because you need to, the communication is two ways. I have tons of stories. I don't want to take too much of this time, but it was a very engaging experience. And I felt the team was there.
Wonderful. Maybe we'll have to have you on for a repeat to talk more about those stories.
Yeah.
But that's great. Talking about how you took a brand from just being a need brand to a love brand, how you were including refugees arriving in your country and to give them meaningful work and include them and make sure that they knew that they could have a prosperous life in this new world that they had no idea about. What a commitment to people and humanity, which really speaks to the IKEA brand that we know and love. So I'm an IKEA customer because I love the brand and the values that it stands for. Yeah. And so thank you for being part of that mission. So navigating non-belonging. So the show wouldn't be the show I Know I Belong When if we only talked about the good part. But let's also talk about the not so good part.
Yeah.
So you walked onto a stage to accept an award on behalf of IKEA and walked off holding a tie. What was actually going through your mind in that moment? And what did you do with that tie?
Yeah. So the first thing that came is, how sloppy is that? Read the names and see if there is a woman and go buy a bunch of flowers. But this was the first thought. But then I was on stage. It was even worse because the minister who gave me the tie, he was embarrassed because he saw it was a tie and I was a woman. And then he said, so give it to your husband. But you can imagine behind this question, you don't know anything about me. What if I haven't an husband? No, it's... Yeah. Anyhow, it goes worse and worse. So I didn't want to embarrass him even further. I took the tie and I talked about our engagement, IKEA, and all the things that I had to share with the audience. Then I went to the office, and this tie, I got also a plate, and the plate I think is still hanging on the wall of the Italian office at the time. The tie, someone in the office took it, and so it didn't go to waste. Someone is wearing it, but I left it for the colleagues to wear it. It is a sign of what they thought. They didn't even think for a second that a woman could have a leadership position.
Yeah. I would love to say that we have evolved as a society. I don't think we have completely arrived at that evolution yet. However, we are continuing to chip away to make sure that people understand that women absolutely can not just lead companies, but also countries. I think my own country needs to have a little bit of an awakening there, but we will see when that happens, hopefully in my lifetime.
Hopefully.
So women in leadership are routinely asked how they manage a career and a family, question their male counterparts almost never hear. How did you navigate that double standard without letting it define or derail you?
So, first of all, I got these questions many times, unfortunately. But I really wanted to have a family. And as you said, I'm a mother of 3, so it was quite a busy kind of family. But I also wanted to have a career, and I didn't want to give up. I was conscious that it meant a lot of work, but I chose it. So I never complained or complain about it. But of course, I was annoyed by such questions. And it didn't undermine my willingness to pursue a family and a career, but I wanted to reply somehow. So it depended. If it was a man asking, I asked back. And I asked, so how did you cope with your career and your family? And if it was a woman, because also women ask those questions, I asked them, are you asking the same question to your male interview? And this, at least for a second or for a while or for the audience, raised a little doubt, saying, okay, is this really the usual cliche that we are utilizing or not?
Yeah, let it go, because somebody should be asking me how I'm navigating career and a family.
Exactly.
And they don't. And they don't sometimes, right?
Yeah,
and so
but if you don't challenge it with these questions, being also nice and polite, but challenge it, it will continue because it has continued.
Right. So
someone has to say that.
And, yeah, and a lot of times I sometimes don't get asked that question, and I interject just because I want people to know, look, like I'm balancing a family too. And how do we make sure that we are asking the same of both men and women or anybody on the gender spectrum of how they are balancing their career and a family, if they have a family, because there are a lot of people in the world who choose not to raise children, and that's very okay. So how are we also accepting them in the world?
Yes.
Okay, so we're starting to get to the end of the conversation, but before we really get to the end, I want to talk about the partnerships that you've had across social enterprise in India and Thailand. Specifically, those organizations had time to grow, find additional clients, became self-sufficient. What does that model teach us about sustaining belonging when it actually requires the real work?
Yes, this was a project that I loved because it was really sustainable, because we identified partners, social enterprises in India and in Thailand. And we provided, as IKEA, sales channels. That were our stores. Of course, those companies could not produce the enormous amount of volumes that an IKEA, even one IKEA store requires. So we went commercially for limited editions. Every year they could produce a certain quantity and we sold them as a limited edition. But the difference between this kind of product, where we provided the design, the implementation, normally it was embroidery on textiles or pottery, and we provide the sales channel, was that we committed for a 5-year contract so that they were sure that for 5 years they had at least one big client. And this gave them the time to sell around to other companies and other retailers and bigger portfolio clients that reduced their risk. Because when you lose one, if you have one client, then you're done. But if you have many, and in 5 years they managed, of course. And it was not charity. We bought their products, we sold those products because we needed to keep our price picture as a company. So with a limited margin, but nevertheless, it was really a win-win solution. And I was there, I went at the very beginning, I went to visit this village in Uttar Pradesh in India, which is one of the poorest states in India, a very poor village, but you had to see the difference between these 52 women that were hired in the first place to embroider these textiles and the other women in the village. So those who didn't work, they were very shy, they were covering their face with a veil, but looking at us from behind the trees or something. These ones, they were also, I feel like raising myself, they were proud and they were asking, what color you prefer? What is it? A completely different personality came out of those women. And now I think they are over 2,000. So the project went on. And these 52, when I left IKEA, they were 1,200. I think now there are over 2,000.
Wow. What a legacy.
Yes.
What a legacy to build.
And the other thing is that I asked, with an interpreter, of course, I asked them, what are you going to do with the salary that you earn? And I saw their places, they were very poor places. They were all saving money for the education of their kids, because they knew that this would have been the real empowerment and the emancipation factor, education, because they could hardly read and write. So this is amazing. And I'm grateful to IKEA that had this idea. I remember myself and another colleague in Austria, we decided to test it. We were both women, by the way. But we decided to test it and it worked. And then other IKEA countries picked it.
That's wonderful. And gets to the heart of the values and the mission of IKEA. And talk about, this is a real life example of when you support women in a community, how it's going to lift up the community.
Yes.
And giving somebody a meaningful job is going to change their life, right? Absolutely. It's going to change the trajectory that they are on. So thank you so much for doing that. Okay, one other question I have for you, because this is an organization that we both have been involved with for a very long time, the EDGE certification. You were able to get IKEA Switzerland's to the lead level of diversity and inclusion. And so what would you say to leaders that treat certification as the finish line rather than the foundation?
I have to say, for me, it was super useful. So because you measure and you see where you are, you set goals, and then you implement actions that help you reach those goals. And the EDGE certification and analysis provide you with all those tools, as you know also. It has to be foundational, because you embed everything in your strategy, in your company strategy, and then it becomes part of who you are as an organization. And you have your own checkpoints, you make it sustainable again. Cannot be once off and it's fantastic and you celebrate, and then if you don't do anything anymore, it gets diluted, and then you can go back to a situation where there's no equity or balance anymore. So I really believe, I met edge that way when we were certified as IKEA Switzerland, and we saw the benefits over time, that we learned a lot as an organization. So I would really recommend it as a foundational step to go ahead and build your own strategy and make it sure that it stays.
Yeah, talk about how it really changes the way you look at your business. And it's really about it's not just getting the award or the fun plaque that goes onto the bookshelf, right? It's about the work and how are you actually changing the way
become
the
more
organization...
attractive for talents. You become more interesting for clients. As I also mentioned before when we did the repositioning, you have more motivated people. You have less staff turnover. You improve also in your innovation approach, because you get, for real, people that bring different perspectives and knowledge and capabilities. So there are a lot of advantages. And starting with the right first step, it's important.
Yes, absolutely. Okay, so I have a fun question for you. You have lived and worked across Italy, Switzerland, and globally. You've navigated corporate boardrooms, UN panels, and social enterprises in Southeast Asia. Stepping into the kitchen, if belonging was a meal, what meal would it be and why would you cook it for us?
I like this question because having belonging as a sensory thing, it's fascinating. I am Italian, so I cannot refrain from mentioning an Italian meal. And so an Italian meal, I would say risotto, Milanese risotto. Milan is famous for being structured, productive, elegant, purposeful, and the risotto is all of that. It has a fantastic texture. It is intentional. It requires patience because it takes some time, attention. You cannot leave a risotto alone. And it's like a quiet confidence that you get from a risotto. So belonging is a bit that. But if I can add, because with food, and we go to another latitude, I think the Lebanese mezze is also very much indicating belonging, because it's this meal with many different recipes and very colorful that you share every dish. And it's a lot about, being together and sharing and helping each other. And it's also a joy for the eye with all these colors of the different vegetables.
It's more of an experience. You get immersed into, it's not just about the food, right? It's about the people around you. It's about the community at the table. So what a great way to bring belonging as a meal to everyone.
Yes.
Simona, we are bringing this conversation to a close. We end every episode the same way, with a statement that gives the show its name. We've heard your story, your work, your grandmother's wisdom, and the tie you were handed when you deserved a trophy. So now I ask you in your own words, Simona, I know I belong when?
I know I belong whenever I encounter beauty. And I don't mean beauty only in an aesthetical point of view. Of course, a breathtaking landscape or a painting, a sculpture, a piece of art that resonate with you are, of course, beautiful. But I mean beauty also in different ways. Beautiful can be this meaningful, deep conversation that you can have that makes time disappear, can be the spontaneous smile of a child, can be a little step towards peace or a better world. So this is something that fills your soul. I think that this is where I feel that I belong, not to fit to a specific group or to a specific place, but when there are these conditions, I know I belong.
Thank you for this great conversation. I truly appreciate you being here, giving your time to this conversation. However, also the work that you continue to do to lift women and everybody up to make sure that they know that they belong and arrive in the beauty of this beautiful thing we call the world. So thank you, Simona, so much for this conversation.
Thank you. Thank you very much, and continue, because I'm following it and it's really meaningful. It's beautiful, in fact.
This has been a great reminder that belonging is not a destination. It is a practice, and it starts with listening. Friends, if this episode challenged you to move outside your comfort zone, please follow our show and give us that 5-star review you know you want to give, and add a comment about what you will do to champion a culture of belonging. These actions will help to amplify the message to others so they too can find their own moment of belonging. Whether it is navigating the complexities of workplace culture, finding acceptance in a new school, building trust in a local community, or forging identities within our own families, these stories reflect the raw, honest, and unfiltered journeys each of us take every day. And we want to hear from you. Finish the sentence, "I know I belong when," and send us a voice note. Your story could open a future episode. Thank you for listening. Know that your bold, authentic self is welcomed, valued, and loved. And until next time, remember, you belong here.